Back in 2019, I fell in love with this Wheel of Time book series, and I thought to myself, as a thought experiment, I would love to pitch on the show. I don't have the credits for it at the time. I pretended, what if I did? What would I do differently? And so I wrote a musical love letter to the series. I hired the Budapest Orchestra to record it, and I made a video, and I kind of sent it out to the fans who were sharing it like crazy at the time, and Tor.com, Tor being the publisher of the novels, wrote an article on it. So Lorne Balfe, who was hired to score the show, saw it, and he hired me as an additional composer. And so I started off on season 2 writing score, and then I became the music team lead on it.
Greetings, Slow Divers. I am Farida, your host, with my producer, Drew, and we are so stoked for today's episode. But before we start, how are you doing today? Did you hydrate? Well, refill your water bottle because we do not support single-use plastics. Okay, let's dive in. Today on the Slow Dive, we're joined by award-winning composer Nikhil Koparkar, whose music has shaped stories across film, television, and gaming. In 2025, Nikhil composed The Hills of Tanchico, a standout musical number performed by the lead actors in Amazon's hit fantasy series, The Wheel of Time, now in consideration for the 2026 Grammy Award for Best Song Written for Visual Media. His haunting score for the theatrical psychological horror Dead Whisper earned him a nomination for the SCL David Raksin Award for Emerging Talent, and his work with Riot Games brought the official League of Legends Lunar New Year theme to millions of players worldwide. Previously, Nikhil collaborated with composer Lorne Balfe at 14th Street Music, contributing to series like Life on Our Planet, His Dark Materials, and Victoria's Secret's Angels and Demons. Join us as we dive into Nikhil's creative process, his approach to storytelling through sound, and the global journey behind his remarkable body of work. Welcome, Nikhil.
Thank you so much for having me, Farida. It's so nice to be able to chat with you about the creative process because, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's like there's so much to unpack there, and I think the career is long and winding. So any chance we get a time to do that is great. So thanks for all you do, and thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh, Drew and I are just so excited to dive in. I think this is going to be so much fun. We have a first segment, as we call it our icebreaker segment. So I'm just going to give you a few questions just to start us off with, Nikhil.
Sounds great.
Okay. When was the last time you felt awe?
I can remember a pivotal moment in 2019 when I read the Wheel of Time series, actually by Robert Jordan, and one became 15 books, and I was like, this could be fantasy. Having, Hindu and Eastern philosophy imbued in Celtic fantasy, that's also fantasy. So it blew my mind wide open to what's possible in that genre and also kind of my reading tastes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's great because now I'm going to ask you, what are you currently reading or listening to, audiobook or podcast?
I am actually currently reading a book by Ken Follett. I'm also a historical fiction buff, and he wrote a book about the making of Stonehenge called Circle of Days that just came out. And he's so good at plotting and pacing his books because he came from a thriller writing background, and so he can take these giant historical epics and make them really readable. So I've been thoroughly enjoying my time in that.
Oh, wow. That sounds fascinating. What you said, Making of Stonehenge. All right.
Yeah. It's called Circle of Days. Yeah.
Circle of Days. Wonderful. I'm going to write that down. Okay. Nikhil, one last question in our icebreaker. What is one of your favorite family traditions or customs?
That's a really good question. I think like growing up in a Hindu household, we had a lot of pujas and celebrations and, auspicious days to celebrate together. I remember Diwali being a very special time for our family. And also, honestly, anytime we get a chance to get together now, because we're all spread out across the country. My sister lives in Chicago with her family. My parents are up in San Jose. So usually Christmas times are really special because we're all together, usually up north with my parents and spending a few days together. So that tradition of togetherness is just awesome.
I love that. And as a fellow South Asian, I have to ask you, what is your favorite mithai or sweet during your festivals that you like?
Oh, man, it's so tough. That's a tough question. That might be the toughest question so far, actually. But I am a big fan of modaks. you know?
Okay, yeah.
So
Those are
Ganesh
good.
Chaturthi and all that, like I'm all about the modaks.
Yeah, nice. Okay, well, yeah.
If I had to choose.
Yes. Very high caloric stuff, but good stuff.
Exactly.
All right, Nikhil. Well, a little bit more about you now. We know a little bit more about you. We're going to start off with your origin story, how you started. Every creative journey has a spark. Can you share the moment that first drew you to composing and how that early curiosity evolved into this professional calling that you're now in the running for a Grammy?
Well, yeah, I think it's very interesting. There are a few aha moments that make you kind of go, oh, that would be a cool job. I remember a couple of them that were specific standouts, and they may seem almost like they're kind of seeds that are planted that come into fruition many years later. Actually, one of the first core memories I ever have is being around 2 years old and learning to work my dad's cassette machine and listening to Ellis's scores and just falling in love with that music. And I would tell my dad, "Oh, that's the blue song. Oh, that's the orange song." Like I would see it in colors. And so music was a really big part of my life from a young age. I remember the first time I watched the Lord of the Rings movies in the theater, though. And I went, wow, that could be an interesting job. I wonder who does that job. So those were moments before I even got into the music profession that made me feel that way. Then, as you kind of start to do, like I started off playing in bands and I would kind of work on a film here, film there. My first film was in 2012. It was like a adventure comedy kind of a thing. And I kind of started to realize, I love writing. If I could do that every day for the rest of my life, that would be the thing. So 2016, end of 2016 is kind of when I transitioned to doing scoring full time, and I haven't looked back since. So
Wow. 2016, just like it's kind of like recently. And I'm
it's
thinking,
not that long ago.
I
Yeah.
know, that's amazing. Look at you. Okay, well, you worked across different mediums, right? Like film, television, gaming. What are some like what were your favorite and how are those different and how do you approach different I guess TV composing and score versus gaming like for Riot
Yeah.
games like
That's a
how do
really good
you
question. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the mediums often dictate the style of music, the type of collaborative relationships, the length of time you spend on a piece of music. But I think there is a through line, and usually it starts with theme. I think if you're working on a film, if you're working on a TV show, or working on a game, oftentimes the initial conversations will be like, what would be the theme of this? What would capture the world building, the characters, the character arcs? If you were to define it in one piece of music, what would that be? And maybe it's a theme for a specific character, maybe it's a theme for the setting, but it's like what is that one representative piece of music? And so for all three of those, that is very similar. Now, the logistical and technical aspects of scoring are very different in each. Film is a very contained experience, both from the viewer standpoint and then, of course, for the people who are working on it. You may be working on the post side a film for a few months, maybe a few weeks or something like that on the score, and then it's done, right? Whereas with TV, oftentimes you're going for seasons and character arcs are kind of coming to fruition seasons later. So you really want to be cognizant of planning that long term. Like, where's this character going to go? Should we allude to that a little bit? Even if the audience doesn't catch it in season one, they may in a rewatch catch it, or, it just ties things together in a subliminal way where they feel it whether they realize it or not. So that's one of the things. But then the deadlines for TV are just absolutely bonkers. For certain episodes, we would have a week to do 50 minutes of music.
Wow.
Oftentimes, this is why musicians have become music departments unto themselves now. It's just like you have a VFX department, a sound department, you often have a music department because one person cannot do every single aspect of the technical considerations to scoring alone. So it does take a village in that sense. So, TV can be very quick deadlines. Look, with this Hills of Tenjiko song, I only had about 3.5 hours to write it. It's just having inspiration and not enough time can sometimes be a real boon for the creative process. But with games, it's very different. Games, you come in very early in the process often, and it's a 3 to 5 year development cycle. So you're on that game for years.
Wow.
And it can be both a blessing and a curse, because you have more time to develop your material, which is great for the creative aspect. But then it's like, oh, could you get me a theme in a month or two? I'm like, a month? Wow, that's so luxurious. It's almost like too luxurious at times. So There are strengths and challenges, I think, in each. At least that's how I've found it to be.
So, wow, you said 3 to 5 years in development for video games.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So is that how long you had for the Riot games?
So
Lunar?
Riot Games was a very specific instance of collaborating with the studio. Oftentimes when I'm on games, like I'm working on a game right now, we're about 2.5 years in, and we still got a ways to go. So yeah, that is definitely a thing. With Riot, I had worked on a couple of standalone themes. So first I worked on a trailer that was like a champion reveal for Wild Rift, and then I worked on that Lunar New Year theme. And because they're standoff themes, they, contracted me for a couple months of work, and it was one theme that was going to be representative for that specific event that's going to take place in the game. And so, yeah, I had about a month to kind of work on the theme and iterate on it. And games do that a lot. In film, you know how when people accept work from a composer, like even a first draft, it should still sound like a completed demo or mock-up of what that would sound like. Whereas in games, oftentimes you're looking at things at much earlier stages and you iterate as you go. So different way of collaborating, actually.
So you're saying in games you don't know what's up ahead, but you're it's like piece by piece as like they reveal to you, like as far as like, is that if I'm correct on that? Because
Yeah, exactly. Like, oftentimes earlier in the process, you're just getting basic concept art from people. Nothing's in game yet. There's no game quite yet. And so there's concept art, maybe some character art and things like that. And you're getting that as inspiration to kind of make the music. Whereas, with picture, oftentimes it's a locked cut, or I don't know if locked cut exists in its final form anymore. Locked cut is a misnomer, but yeah, like some semblance of a locked cut you usually are working off of. Now, even film, and I would love to know your perspective as well, because I think even in film now, you're starting to see that experience changing. Like I've been writing stuff to scripts sometimes. Actors will be playing it on set while they perform their, the part. So it's all kind of changing.
I find that to be very synergistic, if that's a word, synergetic.
Yeah.
Is it synergistic or synergetic? But like you need feedback. I'll have to Google that. But I was gonna say, like in film, I mean, I find that either and you would probably know this best because we've worked with you, Nikhil, on a very small project, and we're so grateful for you and your beautiful work. That either the director has an idea that they want to bring to the mood or the theme of the film, and then the producers always have their own opinions, but the director has a vision for the film, and we just want to have the sound and the score and the soundtrack just elevate that. For me, like I've never, not in film, but I would think what you just said, you were asking me a question, like, would that be helpful to listen to the music while you're still like trying to lock the picture or perform? Why not? Like, that would be very cool. I think just as someone who appreciates music and just to listen, and I'm inspired by it, and it evokes certain emotions. So I would think in a performance that would too.
Yeah.
But my question, I guess, is on the gaming side, because that's very little I know about gaming.
Yeah.
So do you get to set the tone or the theme since they give you the concept art or in the beginning, since you're not, how does that work? Like, who do you get to collaborate, or do you get to say, this is what I envision for this game and let me show you something? How does that work in gaming? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I think it really depends. I feel this aspect of it is very similar to film. It depends on the collaborator and the relationship between the two people. It's like, especially with films, when there's studios involved, there's maybe a decision by committee. So there's things are much more dialed in. And they'll say, oh, I really want XYZ at this particular time. I want the music to feel like this. It's very detail oriented. And I think with big studios, there are detailed briefs in how they want things to be, that it kind of falls within certain branding parameters, all that stuff. Whereas with indie films, with indie games, I think it's always an opportunity to have different creative conversations. Maybe you're going back and forth. Maybe you go, hey, let me just send you something, see what you think. And you can just use that as a conversation jumping off point. But I think it's very individual to the creative relationship, It's kind of like, so I worked on this Dead Whisper, which was like a psychological horror film. And it was my fourth collaboration with this director, Connor Susi. He was a brilliant guy. And we were watching the rough cut for the first time at his apartment, and he has a piano in the corner of the room. So I was trying out ideas in real time as we were watching, as kind of a visceral reaction to the picture. But that's very specific to that relationship that we had already had a trust and a short form developed, you know? So I do think it is a case by case basis.
Yeah.
That's my thought on it.
No. I love that. That's very insightful because it would seem like it'd be case by case. Everything is so unique to its own.
Mm-hmm.
For the Hills of Tanchico, how did that come about? Like, how did that start? How did that process start for you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that it's very interesting how that all came to fruition because it was kind of a 6-year journey for me.
Yeah.
So back in 2019, I'll try to keep the TLDR version of this, you know, like the Cliff Notes version. But, you know, back in 2019, I fell in love with this Wheel of Time book series. And I thought to myself, as a thought experiment, I would love to pitch on the show. I don't have the credits for it at the time. I pretended, what if I did, what would I do differently? And so I wrote a musical love letter to the series. I hired the Budapest Orchestra to record it, and I made a video, and I kind of sent it out to the fans who were sharing it like crazy at the time. And Tor.com, Tor being the publisher of the novels, wrote an article on it. So Lorne Balfe, who was hired to score the show, saw it, and he hired me as an additional composer. And so I started off on season 2 writing score. And then I became the music team lead on it for season 2, kind of helping to shepherd the season across the finish line and also writing a big portion of the music or arranging Lorne's themes and things like that. And then I was asked to do this song, Hills of Tanchico, kind of on my own. And I was given lyrics written by the brilliant Remy Park, who had written episode 6 as well. So they had a whole lore backstory of like a song that has its origins in a more kind of a darker, nefarious undertone, but distorted throughout thousands of years of history. It becomes this fun body bar song, you know, kind of a sea shanty. And so I was only given 3 notes from production. You know, we wanted to be a sea shanty, we wanted to have Asian and African instrumentation, and we wanted to reflect the geographical location of Tanchico, and then we want it by end of today. That was it. You know,
oh my gosh. Wow.
So I had no real, you know, other guidance other than that. So I had to come up with this thing really fast. And, you know, 95% of what you hear in that final recording was that what I recorded here. And then after they approved that, the following week, I did a remote recording session with the main actors who were based in Prague at the time because they were filming. And they were going to do a whole choreography and, you know, build the scene around the song, essentially. So they kind of made the song the centerpiece of the scene. And so they needed to get the vocals done, you know. And so it was like coaching them through the parts, which was the whole thing was just crazy. I never could have imagined 6 years ago reading those books that I'd get to contribute in that way. So yeah, it's been a dream come true for sure.
No, first of all, how incredible. Like you put it out there and you like pitched them and you took the initiative and then you got connected. It was meant to be. And it's so, I love hearing these stories, especially in our creative community, because I find so much inspiration in it. But you really did like go out and say, you know what? I like this. I'm going to go create this and let's see what happens. And here you are. I mean, it's pretty wild, but I applaud you on that, Nikhil. I think
thank you.
I really hope a lot of our creators who are listening today will take that inspiration from you because, you know, sometimes you have to take the lead and just like create your own opportunities and see what comes from that.
Yeah.
And
I think more now than ever, you know, I really feel that like our industry is in such flux and, you know, the cavalry isn't coming, right? So we have to figure out ways of creating our own destiny. And that's the one thing that's in our control. You know, there's so much that feels out of our control these days. I think that's the one thing that we can do.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's also so like interesting and amazing that you like they only gave you like 3 like touch points or to frameworks to work with. Like it had this is an instrumental, this is a location, and then you just had to just go with that. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. How was the experience working with the actors and listening to your music for the first time?
Yeah. It was incredible. I mean, it was a little nerve-wracking, to be perfectly honest, because I'd never worked with actors like that, you know, especially of that caliber, like coaching them through the parts. And then the writer of the episode and the director of the episode were also in the room. The executive producer of the series was there. So, you know, I was it was a lot of trying to figure out. I think there's many different ways to approach working on a like in a collaborative way that way when you've never met people before. Suddenly you have to be on,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was trying to figure out how to play to the strengths of the actors, make them feel as comfortable as possible. So for example, I think we were all starting to give notes at the very beginning of the session to Kira Coveney as she was doing her main vocal part. And she was doing the first couple of takes, so just finding her footing, figuring it out, then the idea came like, hey, what if we just took it line by line and we use a bit of the first takes at the very beginning of the song. We use the later takes later on in the song because she's supposed to sound nervous when she sings in the actual song. And then as the chorus kicks in, she kind of sounds a bit more like confident. So actually it worked in our favor to have that. So I think it was like being able to think on our feet, and I think once I would suggest those ideas and things like that, I felt like everyone in the room was able to feel like, okay, this is going, where we have some sort of a momentum going. And so, yeah, it's just like managing expectations, making people feel comfortable, like all these soft skills that are not related to the music, but it informs the music so much. So that was a really good learning experience, actually.
Yeah, emotional intelligence and soft skills. And working in the room with all those, with the vast production team.
Yeah.
I'm making note of that. I love that. I was also going to ask you, this is more from the indie perspective. Like when someone works with you and they bring you on, do you feel like, would you have tips for producers or directors as far as like what kind of language to use to communicate music? Because I know, we should take a music theory class, but a lot of us don't. We just jump right in. What do you prefer? Like, what would be the ideal situation working with the director of a film, like especially with visual, language and communicating emotions. Like I know on a project that a short that we worked on, I was like, I like it a lingering tone. Is that the right way to convey that? I don't know. Do I give samples? So any advice on that for us who don't have a musical background but know what we like?
Well, actually, I think it's advantageous sometimes not to have a musical background and know what you like. So in my opinion, I prefer to meet filmmakers where they are. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes people don't have a musical background. And actually that's to the benefit of the film or the project because, ultimately who's going to see it is the audience. And what does the audience feel? Well, what do we want to convey is like the emotion. We want to convey like, what is this character going through in this moment? Maybe it's a dialogue scene. Is there an undertone of tension between these two characters? What's their backstory? What brings them to this moment? What do we want the audience to take away from it? Do we want to score what's happening on the screen? Do we want to score the subtext? Do we want to bring in maybe a thematic idea of this person, or do we want to kind of lay back? All these things are common ground conversations that we can have. So for me personally, like I love asking questions. A lot of questions. Like, let's say there was a temp track in the score. What about the temp track do you like? Do you like the rhythmic elements? Do you like the melody? Do you like how sweeping it is? Do you like how subdued it is? Do you like where it rises and falls? You get so much info from that. Do you like how it conveys an emotion? What kind of emotion does it convey in the scene? So you get a lot of information, and I think that's all a composer really needs to be able to meet a filmmaker where they are. So sometimes like not having the musical knowledge is probably the best thing because you can meet on emotion, which is what you really want to convey in the first place,
Oh, that's great. What out of your film projects has been the most like rewarding and fun in collaborating with the filmmakers? Is there a project that stands out to you?
There are two that really stand out to me, I would say, and they're vastly different. So the first one I mentioned was Dead Whisperer, which was this feature film. And there was just so much trust between us. I think that was a big part of it. I'd also gotten this Real Change grant, which gave me some funds to be able to record live instruments. So I recorded one of the featured vocalists of The Wheel of Time appears on that because we became friends through that whole experience. So I had to record all these crazy phrases and weird stuff. I had a woodwind player record woodwinds from all over the world. I bought a Thai instrument called a ken and got it from Thailand, learned to play some rudimentary phrases, put that all over the score. We had a 30-piece string section.
Oh
We
my
had a
goodness.
percussionist. We had Mayan death whistles. We had like all sorts of crazy. It was like a musical playground, you know? And my director wanted themes, musical themes. I was like, oh, this is like my kind of film, you know? So I think from that aspect of like creative, no limitations on creativity, it felt like. So that was wonderful. And the second project was actually a short film. And it was a film called The Flower of Battle. And it's a hilarious comedy, adventure comedy.
Mhm.
I guess it's kind of reminiscent of like Princess Bride,
Mm.
Zorro, Robin Hood, but like the 40s version, you know, the Errol Flynn kind of stuff.
Mhm.
The golden age of Technicolor Hollywood, and they wanted to capture that feeling. So they were down to shell out for a full orchestra for the score. And we recorded all 60 musicians in the room, how they did in the old days. It was a lot of very like, you know, thematic material. I had like 4 themes in that one little 15-minute score. It was just like, how would this feel like if this was like one of those golden age of Hollywood feature films, you know, with like orchestral themes and overtures and, you know, that kind of thing, reprises. So it was very, again, a chance to really just go wild with the music.
That is incredible. You said
It
what?
was really fun. Yeah.
So how long, both Dead Whisper and Flowers of Bloom, you said?
Flower Battle.
Flower Battle. How long did each of those projects take you respectively to work on?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. The short film actually took longer, but only because I was working on Lauren's team full time at the time as well. So I basically told him, hey, I would love to work with you guys on this. I just won't be able to, you know, work on it full time over the next couple months. And they were totally fine with that because they were like, you know, we want this to be the best it can be. Take the time you need. So all told, I think I spent 4 months on that score on and off, you know. Just when I had a moment, I would quickly go and like work on it. So I had the freedom of time. And then with Dead Whisper, it was about 2 months all told, including the orchestral sessions and everything. And it was a really beefy score. It was almost 60 minutes of score.
Wow.
So it was a lot of, because it was creating like a musical world for this thing to live in. Like this guy goes on this island that is out of time and space itself. So it had to feel like nowhere we've seen before. It's a very trippy movie, you know, and it needed that kind of a score, I think.
Where can we find Dead Whisper?
So Dead Whisper is available. It had a limited theatrical release last year and now is available on Prime on demand and then also Apple TV Plus and I think a few others. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna have to. I have to listen to the music. So,
yeah, totally.
Because and we're gonna link it on our episode guide because I mean we're discussing it and I really it took you 2 months. You said.
Yeah,
2 months.
2 months, and it was and I was actually working on The Hills of Tenchiko at the same time, so it was just a crazy time. I was working probably, I was calculating it out. I was working probably 90 to 100 hours a week at the time. So
okay, so when you have 3 different projects and you're composing 3 different distinct projects, how does that work for you creatively? Like, how do you like? Because it's music, and I mean, what is your process like? Like when you're going back and forth between maybe like a short film versus a feature versus like a TV series. Like what is that like? How do you manage your creative process? Walk us through that? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, everybody's process is different. So I'm always curious to hear the answers to people's answers to this question as well. I know for me, I actually really like the variety. So there was overlap between Hills of Tenchiko, Flower of Battle, and Dead Whisper. So they're complete opposite scores. And it was really fun because when you felt like you couldn't live in one world for, you know, like you needed a break, you could switch to something completely different. And for me, I live and die by routine. I think I'm very much I have a schedule of when I write best, which is usually like 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. And so I make those core writing hours, you know, usually 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Again, core writing hours. And then in the middle will be like doing errands and stuff and also writing emails and doing all that kind of, you know, admin related stuff. So that's kind of how I do things.
I love that because this is such a new area for me, and this is why I'm so excited that you're here and we're getting to dive into your process because it's very illuminating. What happens? Like, let's just say like you're out there running errands and inspiration strikes. What do? You put it in your like your iPhone? What do you do? Do you give yourself a voice memo?
I have literally thousands of voice memos. It's so bad. Like I'm like, one day I'll actually organize these into something coherent.
No,
but
that's cool.
That day has not come yet, unfortunately.
But I mean, that does happen, right? Like just like
yeah.
when you step away from like your composer's desk, like inspiration can strike anytime, and you're like, this would be great for the TV show.
100%, yeah, and especially now, like now that my schedule is less than 100 hours a week, I think at that time when I would leave the computer for the day or whatever, or I would be doing errands, like I was always on the verge of collapse. Oh, wow. So I was like, I was always just very exhausted, and so I wasn't really thinking about music when I wasn't at the computer as much. But when I would get there, it would be like a switch would turn on. So, I think we as creatives, like, it is like when our creativity rises to meet the expectations of the project in a way. Like if we're just left to our own devices working on something, we could take forever on it. If we're suddenly have to get it done in a week, it's like somehow it gets done, and our brain accommodates. So I think like when I was in the thick of it, I would be just like accommodating, and I would give myself the rest when I needed, just completely away from the music for an hour or two, and then go back to it, as fresh as I could to tackle again. Yeah.
Now, this is another silly question, but like, what do you listen to? What music do you listen to when you're composing? I mean, do you have a Spotify list, or are you listening to like, emo rock or oldies? What do you listen to?
I'm an oldies fan, I'm such a diverse listener. Like I love everything from Cat Stevens to Iron Maiden,
Oh my gosh, Iron Maiden.
Yeah. I am also a metalhead at heart.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That is a stretch. Cat Stevens to Iron Maiden. So that's crazy. No, I wonder, because I mean, do you ever get tired of listening to music since you're working on music, or is that like just like do you ever get tired of it, or do you need like quiet time?
To be honest, yeah, like I definitely like I love taking time away from the screens, have some quiet time. Sometimes I'll put on like a rainy ambience video on YouTube or something just to kind of calm my mind. I'll read a book or something because it's, just time doing something completely different, but also feeling engaged in what you're doing. So I'll do that. But, I feel like those oldies are evergreen for me. I never really get tired of them. I always love listening to them. And they give, musical inspiration because I feel like the way those artists gave their all to the music, you feel that. You feel that when you listen to it. They were like in it. And you could take that away as creative inspiration. So I love that. I still love listening to that, even after a long day.
Amazing.
But, yeah.
And so, okay, so I know earlier we said that you started in 2016, which to me is like very recent, and you've done done so much amazing work. How did it feel like the first time you were working with like an orchestra or like with so many musicians? How was that experience like for you the first time?
Oh, it was so emotional. I remember the first time I worked with like an ensemble was on an album called Nature of All Things in 2017. I flew to New York with a friend of mine who's a santur player, and we were doing a santur piano and kind of orchestral ensemble album. And I just remember feeling so emotional seeing these players give their all to music I wrote. I was like, wow, I would do this every day if I could, and I feel now numerous recording sessions later, that feeling still feels the same. It still feels in some degree to like the first time, even with the nerves of like, oh man, we have to get through so much music in a specific period of time. Oftentimes like we'll have only a couple hour session. We have to like really just go for it. So you're really on the whole time, but that magic is never lost, I think. At least for me, I feel it feels like the first time every time.
No, that's beautiful. And santur is such a beautiful instrument. I mean,
isn't it? Oh my God. Yeah.
That and yes, that always gets me. It's such a, I don't know. I think if I had to attach an adjective to that, like ethereal and and like grounding at the same time, which are complete opposites, because ethereal, I think like something like highly spiritual, but then grounding. I don't know. Yeah. I like it. But yeah, that's a beautiful instrument.
Great way to describe it. Yeah.
Well, you would let me know that because I don't know, but I'm learning. I'm learning today from the best. Okay. So from the composer's toolkit, are there what kind of like how many people do you work with on various projects, and like what kind of software or creative tools do you use, or some for the emerging composers or who want to like learn from you and want to start?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really depends on the project. So, for example, on the Flower of Battle, which was kind of crazy, I was orchestrating mainly myself, and then I had
Mm-hmm.
some orchestration support from a friend of mine, Joe Carrillo, who works for Joy Music House, which is a company that's of composers that support other composers. So he helped me with some orchestration on that and was invaluable for that. On Dead Whisper, I had a team of 12 helping me out. So it was a massive team, you know. And when I was on Lauren's team, it was probably on any given project, there was at least 6 people on it. So, you know, these things definitely take a village. I think, like, as far as the creative process of how a cue starts, it usually starts with a mock-up
Mm-hmm.
in a DAW, a sequencer. You know, I usually use Logic Pro or Cubase,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the project. I grew up using Logic, so that's always been like something that comes to me, but I learned Cubase pretty extensively through working on Lord Balf's team. So I kind of switch between the two. Maybe it's the chronic indecisiveness in me, but I use a lot of sample libraries. So sample
Mm-hmm.
libraries, for people who don't know about this kind of stuff, is they're kind of, you know, if you want something to sound like a violin, you could play it on your keyboard, and then you can load up a violin patch and you program it to try to sound like a violin performance as best as you can. It's not like the real thing by any means, but they are quite good, you know. And you
Wow.
do that for every instrument that you have in there. And once that's in, you speak to the film production and you send it in. You go through some rounds of revisions, and after that mock-up is approved, if there's budget for live recording, you may record on top of that. You may replace certain elements, but usually it's a combination of the sample library stuff and then the live recordings. And that's all mixed together. Very rarely now is it purely a live recording because of budget. And then
Mm-hmm.
also, you know, scores have changed. You know, John Williams' purely orchestral score is very different now to the way score functions and also is created. So a lot of times there's synths, there's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
electronic things that you would only do through samples or analog synths, but they're recorded in that way as a performance. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you for dropping that knowledge for people who don't know how intricate and complicated but interesting this whole process is.
Oh yeah.
Do you play any instruments? I mean,
Yeah, so
piano. Yeah.
I grew up playing classical piano actually,
Wow.
all throughout high school. So I was always the Chopin guy. That was like
Mm-hmm.
my dude, you know. And so yeah, I loved classical piano. I picked up the guitar in college and then bass, and then recently I picked up the drums, which is fun. I want to keep learning new instruments, I think, because it's important for the creative process. Like you think about music differently. With that score, I learned the Thai instrument a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Yeah, I just always want to make that a part of it because we expand our horizons that way, and I always want it to feel new a little bit, you know.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So guitar, piano, and drums. That's
And yeah, drums and bass. Yeah.
and bass. Yes. Okay. So is there a favorite soundtrack from films that you like, or what are your top 3 film sound scores from like
Oh man,
that you could share with us that you
that
really
is a good
like?
question. I remember some of my first memories of like hearing scores were probably going to a sleepover and you know, hearing John Williams scores, you know, on
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars or what. So I would say probably Star Wars would be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The other one would be maybe Lord of the Rings, Howard Shore's Lord of the Rings score. I was just incredible themes in music. Like that's the one that really made me think about being a film composer. The third one is hard. It would be yeah. Okay, can I give an honorable mention as well?
Sure.
Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Of course. Of course.
Okay. So third one, I would say if I was to pick one from Hans Zimmer would be Interstellar, because I just feel like that score captures the love of a father for his children and the loneliness of space. It just approaches space in a completely different way. You know, it's not grandiose and operatic in that way. It's not like just terrifying. It leaves you with a sense of awe. And I just loved that. And it's also a family story. And it captures that. It's so cool. And the honorable mention I would mention would be a recent score
Mm-hmm.
by a composer named Emile Mosseri, who wrote a score for an A24 film called Minari about this immigrant family, Korean immigrant family that moves to Arkansas in the 80s or something. It's a family drama, but oh my God, some of the most gorgeous and unique film score music I have heard in recent times.
No, I love that. We're gonna link that because Yes, Interstellar is just
It's so great. Yeah.
all the ones you've mentioned are amazing, and I think, but yeah, Minari that came out like a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah. It was like
Yeah,
2019, 2020.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I will have to check it out for sure. Um, this is okay. So when are you going to find out about the hills of Tanchico? Like, how soon are you going to find out if you've made it to the?
Right. So basically, the way it works is Recording Academy had opened up voting October 3rd through October 15th. So this is the first round. I'm very grateful that Sony submitted it for that best song written in visual media category. I think a lot of it had to do with the fan reaction. You know, the fans have been like sending me Hills of Tanchico t-shirts and doing flash mob sing-alongs at conventions and stuff. So I think Sony saw that and then they wanted to submit it. And the nominations, I think, are announced November 7th. So that's when we'll find out if it makes it through to the nominations round, the final round. And then the ceremony is in early February, I believe. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, that's so exciting. Is there anything like your fans or your friends can do to like support this? Or is that just basically solely based on the voting members?
Well, yeah, no, thanks for asking. I mean, the great part about voting members is like I'm a voting member myself.
Okay.
And voting members are music professionals, right? So I think the more people that know about it, the more likely voting members are going to hear about it. And so just helping to spread the word, it makes all the difference, in a big or small way. Yeah, I have found that to be true. And I'm very grateful that people have been doing that. Yeah.
No, we will do that. We will signal boost that for sure. Now that we know the dates, it's coming up. We still have like till the 15th. So
yeah. It's about a week away. Yeah.
Okay, our final segment, Nikhil. This is such a great conversation. I have learned so much, but I have to ask you. I know I have to ask you. Like, here we are in this world of AI and the future of creators and composers. What are your thoughts of like AI tools and in music and composition?
That's a really good question. I think everyone's going to have a different line in the sand they draw. For me personally, I got into this because I love the creative process. So I don't want to really outsource the creative process to something else. Like that's the part of actually struggling to find the right notes that would make the theme the best it could be. That's the part I enjoy. That's the discovery. For me, that's not going to necessarily be a part of that process. However, if there was an AI tool in my sequencer that I could throw in a prompt that said like, hey, these are the delivery specs of how the production company wants the stems outputted to. Instead of spending, 8 hours routing my template and bouncing stems, please reroute it for me and bounce them so that it's in the exact delivery requirement. See ya. That kind of stuff would be great. Stuff that lets the tech get out of the way and allow me to focus more on composing would be awesome. I think AI is I think it's here to stay, unfortunately for me. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think there's too much money behind it and too much political and financial incentive to not have roadblocks that they should have to slow down the progress or at least go like, what are we actually doing here? I think what has been true in general is always true, which is like, we have to focus on what's in our control. If we can write to our Congress people and make waves like, hey, take this seriously because this is going to affect everyone. By the time it affects music, it's going to affect everybody. So this is going to be an existential thing for us to all be thinking about. But I think like us focusing on honing our craft, being the best we can possibly be, and also honing our voice, because that our individual voice is something that AI is not going to compete with necessarily, because I would imagine that if directors or trailer editors or commercials or anybody is using AI in their stuff, it's for the path of least resistance. Like, how could we make something that would appeal to the most people possible with the least friction, right? But oftentimes we do creative work to express ourselves as well and have some sort of individuality in it. And that's something that I think stands apart from AI and always will, because you're always you. And so focusing on that, I think, is important. That's at least how I'm trying to combat it. But I wish I knew what the future holds. I guess we all don't. But that is something that I always try to focus on what's in my control. And so that's my path forward, at least for now.
No,
I don't know. Yeah.
And that's great. advice for all of us. Just focus on what we can control. And also, I resonate with what you said about the discovery process. That applies to a lot of like creatives outside of music as well. Like that's the joy of coming to those realizations, discovering new ideas, epiphanies, whether conceptualizing, whether as a director or visually, or in your case, to compose. So no, that's important. The discovery part is, I think, is what's going to separate the I guess AI users from the true form, the traditionalist, I guess, now as we move forward into the scary future.
I know. Yeah.
This has been so great, Nikhil. I have to ask you one more question before we go to our reflective part.
Yeah.
What would you like to work on? What kind of projects do you want to continue working on? What would be your like ideal project that you like to do?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, I love reading a lot, and I love combining love of reading with love of music. And I've gotten a chance to do that on, His Dark Materials, now Wheel of Time, even working directly with authors, actually. I worked on an official main theme for this great author, Philip Chase, who wrote the Dan trilogy. And it was like an official main theme I wrote that was representative of the series, and with Brent Weeks on the Lightbringer series, on his Lightbringer series. So I would love to do more things that in the space that occupies books and music, whether it be working with authors directly, also working on adaptations, because getting to know characters from the written page, I think, is always a good way to understand them in a way that you can't understand anywhere else. And I think informing the music from that point is important for adaptation. So that would be the dream, is to continue on that track. I know The Dark Tower is being adapted by Mike Flanagan right now, the Stephen King series. That would be a dream come true because it's one of my favorite series of all time. But, I think in general, the adaptation space is something I want to jump fully into.
Well, I look forward to hearing all of that in the future. And I think that will happen for you. And we will signal boost that so all the amazing authors can be like, Nikhil's our guy. Okay, so now we go to before we say goodbye, we always have a reflective question. And then so here's my reflective question for you. If Earth had a soundtrack or score and you had to compose it, what would it sound like? And how different would it be across the various regions of the globe?
That's a great question. I think immediately I would feel that it should feel ancient, but also timeless. Meaning I would want to incorporate instruments that were from the past and also current. I would want it to feel like it's in the now, but it's also, I remember on Life on Our Planet, we had used bone flutes and all sorts of like ancient instruments. I think there's ways to incorporate that. It's the story of Earth as much as it is where we are now. I also think that it would be really cool if one was to encapsulate it in a piece or album, that the tracks have like a confluence of instruments from around the world, rather than sections of, we're in China now, we're in India now, we're in, because Earth is now integrated. We are a global society. We're all interconnected. And I think a piece that exemplifies the interconnectedness would be something that would be fun to approach, So that's my thought on it. But
I'm glad you said that, because that is our tagline for our podcast. It is, we are interconnected. So I agree. Okay, one more question, Nikhil. How can we be better humans daily?
Man, start with kindness, start with service. Going, how can I help someone today? I think if everyone did that, or if even 10% of the people in this planet did that, our world would be so much better off, right? So maybe that's a good place to start. Maybe gratitude's a good place to start, So if you could find something to love about yourself, you can find something to love in another person. So
yes, underscore bold highlight.
Exactly.
Agree with you. Well, Nikhil, thank you so much for illuminating us today on the power of music and sound. Yes. No, thank you. I am going to link everything in our episode guide, but where can we find you? nikhilmusic.com. And you're also on Instagram.
That's right. Yeah. So you can find me on all socials, and also my website is nikhilkmusic.com. And then, my song Hills of Tanchico is submitted for the Grammys under the Best Song Written for Visual Media category.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nikhil. We appreciate you being here.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I am Farida. This is The Slow Dive. Make time to listen, reflect, and connect.
Thanks for listening to The Slow Dive. Please be sure to subscribe and give us a positive review wherever you get your podcasts. The Slow Dive is hosted by Farida Rafiq and edited by Drew Franzblau. Our theme music is Dive by Zero.